All right, well, I just wanted to welcome everybody today for joining us. We have quite a treat for you. We have Dr. Harriet Myers here. She's an expert in mindfulness, and she is going to be talking to you about using mindfulness as a tool to manage stress. So with that, I'm just going to turn it over to you, Harriet.
Thank you. Thank you. It's really good to be with you all. And as I prepared for today, it just occurred to me that a normal fall is stressful as we're getting ready to go into the winter holidays. And now we have a lot of political divisiveness, and we have uncertainty, and we have COVID, as well as everything else in our daily lives. And so I hope that you can go away from today with some pieces that will be helpful for you. Um, let's go to the outline slide, Carolyn. I think it says brief outline. There we go. Okay. So for those of you who came to this, you've already identified that you're stressed and you want to do something about it. So we're not going to spend a lot of time defining stress because you already have a pretty good idea what stress is. We will talk about specifics of stress as they relate to how mindfulness can help. But what we're going to focus on today to begin with is how do you experience stress? Because each one of you will experience stress differently than I do or that Carolyn does. So we'll work there. Then we will do some practice about, oh, wait, we will do practice all the way through, a little bit here and a little bit there. But then what we will do is really concentrate on how mindfulness can help you manage stress. And toward the end, we'll just take time to develop some practical plans for you. Not pie in the sky plans, but just practical plans about how can you use a bit of what we worked with today as you go forward in your life. What I'd like to do before we go on is just do a little brief sort of I don't know, a pretest, or does that make us all feel anxious if we have to take a pretest? What I'd like us to do is just take a brief moment, and however you're sitting, just pause, support your hands and arms any way that's comfortable. And if you're comfortable with it, close your eyes and just be quiet. Want to just stare at a spot, that's okay, but let's just be quiet for a few moments. Okay, take just a second, and if you'd like to, even jot down with a pen, or just note what 2 or 3 things seemed real significant to you during that period of quietness. Doesn't matter what it was. What was significant? Because that's going to help you learn specifically how to deal with your stress. Okay, and then let's go on, Carolyn, to the next slide so that we can look over the whole array of how we experience stress. That one. Thank you. So in the sort of 3 realms that I've divided our beings up into today, what we're going to do is sort of get some handle on what your habitual cues are, what your habitual stress signs are. And on one hand, we'll talk about feelings. And first will be just the emotional feelings. Are you feeling anxious or a little panicky or sad or irritated? all the just emotional feelings. And also in that realm, we want to put your bodily sensations. Um, where do you experience stress in your body? Do you notice at times that your shoulders are practically up in your ears? Or do you notice that your jaw is clenched, or that your back is really tight? Um, Stop and think just some of the things that happen for you. And then let's go down to actions, and look at actions next. What are the actions that, oh, let me go back to the bodily sensations. You also may experience nausea. You may have GI symptoms. You may have heart palpitations. There are all kinds of ways our body can say, I am stressed right now. This is an acute experience of stress. And of course, while I'm there, what happens when we have fairly chronic stress is that those things that affect our GI system and our cardiovascular system end up causing lasting, or can cause lasting damage. We can have high blood pressure. We can damage our arteries. We can actually develop enough blue feelings or anxious feelings that we experience a true clinical depression. Um, People can be suicidal at the far end, but on the more usual end, we can have we can notice that uh, the autonomic nervous system is firing in the sympathetic way, which is the sympathetic nervous system is firing adrenaline and also causing within the hormone system, it's causing a release of cortisol. And so we're doing some permanent damage to our bodies as well. Okay, enough for there. Let's go down to actions. Just stop. I named just a few. One of your actions may be as simple as getting a frown on your face. It's really an action. It's out there in the world. It may be that you have an intermittent tick and you see the tick is going. Your eye is ticking a bit, or you're working on some probably imaginary zit on your face, that kind of thing, those sort of very nervous habits. We can really go to stomping around, slamming, shouting, being outwardly hurtful. Or it might be that the way you actually experience and respond to your stress is that you withdraw. You know, some people talk more when they're stressed and some people talk less. Some people insist on interacting with others, maybe in an irritating way, and some people really just go in their office or their bedroom and close the door. Okay, so let's go lastly to the thought realm, and because this for me is the most surprising, but also one area that can be the most useful to know. What we know from neuropsych labs all over the country, independent results of different experiments show that when our minds are at rest, and when I mean at rest, when I say that, what I mean is that we're not actively solving a problem. So you're not in the middle of trying to fix your leaf blower, or you're not in the middle of doing a big long division. But when we're just kind of hanging out mind-wise, that what really happens is that we have almost constant mind chatter that we call self-talk. Can you tune into your self-talk? Do you have a sense of what I'm talking about here? If not, you'll have to watch for it. Some of you are probably going, oh yeah, I can hear my self-talk. I know what that is. But what we know about self-talk is this, is that it's almost always critical. Critical of myself or critical of somebody else. And once you're tuned in, I noticed one day as I was walking down the street that I was meeting a man, and I just had this story about how did he pick out that shirt to go with that pair of pants? Because he looked so awful. And why on earth did he do that? Well, really, how that man decided to put an orange shirt with red pants is just really, it doesn't matter. So why was I spending my time going through that thought process of being critical of him? So, okay, self-talk is critical. What else is self-talk? Well, it's almost always grounded in the past, and it's negative. So we're back there in the past, really regretting what we said to that neighbor yesterday, and really just trying to create a story of how we wish that hadn't happened. Often we're in the past and we're really just regretting. We're replaying things that were painful or embarrassing to us, or we're in the future. And again, it has that negative feel. Oh, this afternoon at 3:00, I have to meet with the dean. I don't know why she wants to meet with me. Oh my gosh, well, maybe it's because, and you write this whole novel about what negative thing the dean is probably going to say to you when you don't have really any more information, but you've really written a negative story. I just heard a quote, and I'm going to try to find out who said this originally, but the quote is that with our minds, negatives are like Velcro and positives are like Teflon. They just slide off. So that gives you an idea that this is the human condition. This is how we're put together. We were put together like this probably because when we needed to be sure that we didn't have to run from the lion trying to eat us, we had to be constantly on the lookout for a perceived threat. And so we really did need to focus at one point on the negative. That really isn't true in our society today. So these are really the ways that we experience stress, and all of us do them a little bit differently. All of us are individual in that way. Carolyn, any questions I should attend to? Okay, all right. Please do send Carolyn a question. I'm probably not going to look down at the chat box, but she will, and she'll cue me that you have a question about what we're talking about. So this has painted a fairly negative picture. How on earth are we supposed to lessen our stress if we're experiencing it or expressing it in all of these different ways? And so now what we're going to do is go to the definition of mindfulness, and then we'll put together why mindfulness might help. This is one of my favorite definitions, though there are many out there. And this is from Jon Kabat-Zinn, who is the founder of mindfulness-based stress reduction. I studied with Kabat-Zinn in the very early 90s, or maybe it was 89. No, I believe it was early 90s. And he really believed that we needed to make mindfulness available to anyone who is interested in a healthier life, and that we needed to bring it to Western civilization in a way that's more psychological rather than a religious expression, which it is at times in the Eastern culture. So Kabat-Zinn starts with the word, the awareness. And I do hear the weed eater right next to my window, so I'm sorry if you're bothered by that. The awareness that arises through paying attention in a particular way. So this is paying attention on purpose. This is paying attention right now. And then the probably hardest part is paying attention in a non-judgmental way. To just be curious and open to what's going to happen in this moment and this moment. and this moment. Carolyn, how distracting is that noise? Should I ask David to go next door? Is it okay? Okay. So just realize that we're doing this on purpose. We're staying in the present, and we're being non-judgmental and gentle with ourselves, really. Okay. Let's go to the next slide, Carolyn. Okay. So here's sort of the crux of why mindfulness is helpful. If you just skip around to these three points of the triangle, you'll notice that I have the word awareness in each point. And the awareness is really going to be the key. We'll come back to that as we go through this. First, in feelings. If you become aware of some emotional event going on in your body, that emotions are arising in your thoughts and your feelings, really, can you name that? Can you stop and say, oh, a little bit of anger. Oh, I'm feeling a little angry here. Can you be aware of it, and can you give it a name? Same thing with body sensations. Probably somewhere in that little minute or two that we spent earlier, you experienced either a tiny bit of emotion, like anxiety. Oh, I've got all this to do, and here I am spending my whole lunch hour listening to Harriet Myers. So there may have been anxiety. There may have been a bodily sensation. Your knee is bothering you a little bit because you ran a little bit further this morning or went up 2 flights of steps. So you felt something in your body. Again, what you want to do is simply be aware of it and name it. Oh, warmth. Oh, tightness. Oh, tingling. Oh, discomfort. Or if it's truly pain, you call it pain. Oh, pain in my knee, in my elbow. So awareness and then naming. With actions, well, let's do thoughts first because that will probably follow. With thoughts, if you're suddenly aware, if you're in your executive mode and sort of watching your actions, watching your feelings, watching your thoughts, you can go, oh, I have really wandered off in my mind. I've wandered off into this really catastrophic story, and I don't need to be there. Let me get back to this moment. And usually for me, when that happens, I go almost immediately to my breath. The breath is a nice anchor. So in any of these cases, you notice, you become aware, and then get with your breath and just be with it. Name either where you were or what the sensation is. When it comes to actions, stressful actions, whether they're exploding outward or withdrawing, when you practice mindfulness, what happens is that you have that little space between having an intention to act and then actually acting. And so often what you can do is notice that you're about to speak harshly to your office mate and to say, oh, is that really useful now? Is that what I want to do? You have a choice. While we were sitting for that minute or two at the beginning, I imagine more than one of you got an itch somewhere, because almost any time we sit quietly, we have an itch. There's an itch on my face, there's an itch on my nose. If you're being mindful and if you are in the moment, you become aware, oh, my nose itches and I'm about to scratch it. Is that what I want to do right now? And sometimes the answer is, I'm going to scratch my nose. Other times the answer is, no, let's just see what happens if I don't scratch my nose. And so we act or we choose not to act. And of course, down the road, we may choose to act differently. But at that moment, it's do I act or do I not act? Um, so why does all this help? Why does this awareness help? Well, what essentially happens when we become aware, I'm not just sitting, I'm aware that I'm sitting. I'm not just speaking, I'm speaking knowing that I'm speaking. When we are at that level, that sort of meta level of being present with our emotions, being present with our thoughts, being present with our actions, then we have moved from the physiologically more from the midbrain and um, uh, the amygdala area, which is fairly unavailable to our immediate awareness, and we have moved into our prefrontal cortex. We've actually moved what part of our brain we are using. And when we go to our prefrontal cortex and we act in a certain way, we name the emotion, we notice where our mind went and bring it back to our breath, we become aware of the intention to act, then what happens is we really interrupt that whole cascade of the sympathetic nervous system and the stress hormones from all being released into our body. So it opens the possibility for our parasympathetic nervous system to arise and be more active, which is really our rest and healing aspect of our autonomic nervous system. So what really happens with this is that um, we interrupt the dangerous or hurtful parts of the immediate stress, and it interrupts it immediately, and it also helps to really inoculate us from all the stress disorders in the long run. Okay. So, having said all that, what I'd like for us to do is I'd like for us to take some time here to actually do a guided sitting. I will guide you in the sitting, and as we go, we'll do some teaching in that sitting, and we'll see whether then at that point whether we should pause and take questions or observations. So just get yourself adjusted in your chair and kind of move your body around a little bit, lean forward and backward until you feel fairly centered, feet comfortably on the ground or the floor, your arms and hands supported. You're going to want to have your body erect and showing respect for it, but you don't need it to be rigid. See if you can just move your body slightly in your chair so that you can find that fairly comfortable place. And of course, it won't be comfortable in 10 minutes, I know that, but see if you can find it for that comfortable place now. What I'm also going to do is I'm going to ring a bell to start us and ring a bell to stop us. And the reason I do that is, well, I learned that in my retreats, but the reason I do it is for me now, I'm really attuned uh, to the sound of the bell. And it allows me to move more quickly into sort of a quiet, aware state. There are plenty of apps, which we'll talk about later, if you like the idea of the bell. So I'll ring the bell to start us, and there'll be periods of silence, and there'll be periods of my sort of guiding your activity. Close your eyes if that is comfortable, or just sort of soften your gaze and stare at one spot. The reason we do this is to limit visual stimuli, and when we sit quietly, it limits proprioceptive stimuli. So we kind of narrow the field of what we can pay attention to down to something that's more manageable than if we're running down the street after a garbage cart that got away. That's very hard to stay mindful. So here we go. Just settling into your chair, experiencing the pull of gravity on your feet, on your buttocks and thighs. Adjusting your posture just slightly if you notice that what you chose is not very comfortable already. And when you're ready, bring your attention to your breath. Just watch your breath. Don't try to control it right now. Just be present with the in-breath and the out-breath. No two breaths are alike. Some of them are ragged and almost painful. Some are slow and deep and delicious. And mostly, we don't pay much attention to our breath at all. Just staying with the in-breath and the out-breath. And if you would like to try an optional thing, try just slightly deepening your in-breath and lengthening your out-breath. And so if you're breathing into the count of 3, breathe out to the count of 4 or 5. Just noticing how that feels in your body. Noticing what your mind is doing with that. Oh, I like that, or ooh, I don't like to do that at all. Just noticing. Doesn't matter whether you like it or you don't. Just stay with it for a few breaths. I'd like for you to bring your attention to some very specific aspect of the breath. It might be the air moving in and out of your nostrils. It might be the slight expansion of your rib cage against your upper arms and the different feeling of the clothing in between. It might be the expansion of your belly on the in-breath and the slight deflating toward your backbone on the out-breath. Particularly if you're taking a slightly deeper in-breath, you'll notice that your belly gets more active, expanding on the in-breath and moving back on the out-breath. So choose a place to stay with your breath, one of those smaller places where it takes really exquisite attention to the area to really experience it. And if you find that trying to do this longer in-breath and deeper in-breath and longer out-breath is really not working well for you, just let that go. And just be with your breath, aware of each breath, however it is. Always know that in any time that you've gotten lost in thinking or trying to keep track of your breath and then you get confused about it, you just pause and just go, okay, I'm breathing. Let it be simple. Bring your attention now just to hearing. Notice what, if anything, you're hearing. Maybe you're just hearing silence. It's pretty loud. And notice that we almost automatically hear a sound and try to assign meaning to it. Oh, is that my dog barking? Some dog is barking. Or, oh, there's a car in my driveway. And just realize that to just be aware of the sound means you don't need to assign any meaning to it at all. Just hearing. Because when we start to assign meaning, then we run off on our stories about, oh, someone's coming, I need to go to the door, my house is a mess. Oh my goodness. So just hang with the fact of hearing. They call this bare awareness. About now, you may be wanting to adjust your posture or scratch your nose or look at your clock. And what I invite you to do is just become aware of that sensation. And if there's an intention to act, just notice it. Notice that you can choose to act on the intention, or you can choose not to and see what happens. Anytime your mind is starting to wander, just let it come back to the breath, our in-breath and our out-breath. Now I'd like for you to bring your attention very strongly to your toes, the 5 toes on your left foot and the 5 toes on your right foot. Just noticing any sensation that might be there, or noticing there's no sensation. Might be warmth or dampness or tingling. Breathing down into your toes and up from your toes. And now bringing your attention to your feet and ankles. What's going on there? Just be present with it. And to your lower leg, your calf, the bones of your lower leg and vessels of your lower leg, and the knee. that very intricate and sort of delicate joint that carries us to walking and running and kneeling. Being present with the skin and the sinew and the bones, whatever the sensation is there. Moving your attention now to your upper legs, those powerful large muscles, and to your perineum. Noticing any sensations, tightness, warmth. And up now into your entire body form, your pelvis, your abdomen, and your lungs. Just being present with your belly and your chest, your buttocks and your back. Being present with all those wonderful vessels that cleanse our whole physiological system with each breath and with each pulse, each beat of the heart. You might be quiet enough at this point to feel your heartbeat. But if not, just be there with it. Your heart is serving you well. And now bringing your attention to the entirety of your left arm, the fingers, the palm, the lower arm, the very, very tender antecubital space, the shoulders, the muscles, the nerves. Just being present with your left arm. And breathing into your left arm. Into the arm and back from the arm. And letting go of your left arm in your mind's eye. Bring your attention to your right arm. The entirety of the arm. The finger pads. The wrists, the back of the hands, the elbow. Up into the shoulder. And now the attention to the neck and shoulder muscles, and those muscles as they go up the back of your head and all the way to your forehead, all being with the back of the neck and in the hair follicles of your head. Being present with your ears and your face, both the outer face, smiling, frowning, at rest, but also the interior of the face and head, tongue, teeth, muscles. Being present with that area and with your throat. Is it soft or is it tight? And now, if you would like, you may decide to take a deep breath. Imagine that you're bringing it in through your toes and up to your body mass and out through the neck and the top of your head, as if you have a blowhole, like a whale. Breathing in from the toes and up through the legs and into the body, and the out breath flowing through the chest, the throat, and out the top of the head. Just breathing these wave breaths for 2 or 3 breaths. Notice, do you like that? Do you not like it? Just notice how you're responding. Doesn't matter. Just notice. And if you'd like to just let go of that breathing and breathe naturally, it is fine to do so. Just staying now with the breath in the belly or the nostrils or the rib cage. And as you are ready, just move a bit at your own pace. Open your eyes when you're ready. I so am missing the opportunity to interchange with you verbally about what that was like. Either you were about to jump out of your skin, or you thought it was really, really relaxing, or maybe it was just ho-hum, boring. Thank you, Cynthia, for your message. You're the one who's going to know how mindfulness will best work to sort of calm and center you. What can you do to most efficiently bring your attention to your present moment and help it to stay there? You will know whether doing the body scan that I did is better, or just staying with your breath is better. Someone is saying they stopped thinking. I love it. Even if we can stop thinking for just a few moments, it's really quite a success. Who hated it? If you hated it, are you just not telling me? Because some people really do hate it. And let me pause there just for a moment to talk to you, because my experience is that this is the most simple and at the same time most difficult practice I have ever attempted. Trying to stay in the present moment is incredibly hard. That's why we call it practice. We only practice staying in the present moment, for sure. If you're a person for whom sitting is either uncomfortable, or because you have some bodily pain or discomfort, or if you're going to jump out of your skin if you're trying to sit still, and some of us are like that too, then you may either want to lie down and put yourself in a comfortable position, put a pillow under your knees, and probably not under your head unless it's uncomfortable. And then you can let your gaze sort of stay on the ceiling, because most of us in this day of sleep deprivation, if we lie down and close our eyes, we just go to sleep, which maybe you need. But if you're really trying to do meditation, if you're trying to do mindfulness, you weren't trying to go to sleep. So, and then if you're one of those people who jumps out of your skin when you try to sit still, try a very slow walking, where you kind of pick a short path, maybe not any longer than 10, 12 feet, maybe a little longer, and just walk it back and forth. Walking it so slowly that sometimes it helps that you have to really concentrate on holding your balance. That will keep you in the moment for sure. We are in the moment if we're worried that we're going to fall down. And then you can pay attention to that very intricate activity of slowly turning that 180 degrees to go back the other way. So sometimes that works better. So yes, Carolyn is being helpful, because I'm moving into how do we do this at home, and it's time for us to do that. Two ways to do this. I would very much encourage you to use both of these. The first is a formal practice. And that means that you commit to for the most part, a certain time of day and a certain place, either in your office where you can close the door, or in your study, or which may be the same place right now, or or looking out, overlooking your yard, a place that can be quiet, and pick an amount of time for your daily practice. Now, I'd love for you to practice for 20 minutes a day. And some of you are going, are you kidding me? Okay, so don't do that. Don't set yourself a goal that you're going to not reach, because then what you'll start doing is being critical of yourself rather than being non-judgmental and open. So maybe for you, saying, I will sit for 20 breaths in the morning. And then, of course, what happens when we're counting our breaths, we lose count because our mind wandered off and we have to go back and start over. But it might be just 2 or 3 minutes. Commit to a daily practice if you possibly can. Use the deepened in breath and the lengthened out breath if you can, if it feels good. Let me tell you why we do that, and that is because deepening the in breath and lengthening the out breath keeps more carbon dioxide in our blood, and so our brain interprets that increased carbon dioxide, even though this sounds backward probably, interprets that as our body telling our brain on a very, very basic level, everything is okay, things are fine. So it is a physiological way to really, it's a way that you can actively develop, and that will let you experience less stress pretty immediately. And then using this one phrase, if you notice your mind has wandered, it wandered off. It always does. If you have a mind, it will wander. Just notice where it went and come back to your breath. Now, why are we noticing? Because after you've been sitting for a couple of months, you'll just kind of peruse what you had noticed, and you'll notice that, oh, gee, I do an awful lot of catastrophizing about the future. You'll be able to name that place your mind likes to go and hang out, and that will help you recognize it more quickly. So that's why we just notice where your mind went and bring it back to the breath. The last little piece we'll talk about, and I want us to have some time for questions, is that why we do a formal practice is to sort of develop the mindfulness muscle so that we'll use it throughout the day. Ideally, according to the Buddhists, is that we would reach full enlightenment, which means we're mindful every second. Well, none of us are going to be there, but it is so helpful to be mindful more frequently during the day. And a way that you can encourage that is to look at your daily activities and pick out a cue that occurs, 5 or 10 times in your day, or maybe 20. And depending on what your day is like, you will use that cue to just go, oh, it's time for me to take 3 mindful breaths, just 3. So it may be opening your refrigerator door, which also helps if you happen to not want to snack all day, because then you can catch your intention of reaching for something other than a carrot or a celery stick. So pick out something. It might be stopping at a stop sign. It might be something you have to do with your computer, because most of you are having to work with your computers a lot right now. So it may be if the university has logged you off because you left your screen idle, it may be every time you're logging back in. So pick out a cue, and that's going to be very helpful. Also, as you do this, you're going to be noticing more subtle cues that suggest that your stress level is starting up. Oh, I'm feeling just a little tightness as I'm breathing. Maybe you never did notice that before you started trying to be mindful and aware. And so if you start to notice those stress cues, notice what you're doing and what you're thinking about, and then just stop, be present, take 3 breaths. The thing I have found about this, and if you were able to talk with some of my friends and my husband, is that all of this we're trying to do non-judgmentally. We're trying to be gentle with ourselves. Oh, yeah, my mind wandered. Okay, mine's wandered. Let me get back to my breath. So as you are being non-judgmental, as you're being curious about how your being works on this level, and open to whatever's there. Maybe you're having a murderous thought going through your head. Just go, oh, look at that. Well, you're probably going to pause before you start to act on it. So just say, okay, I'm capable of really awful thoughts. All right, well, that's useful for me to know. Not, oh my gosh, I shouldn't think that way. And what hopefully will happen for you, and it's really happened for me, is that I really take myself a lot less seriously, and I have a much better sense of humor. I can just sort of go, oh, there I go again. There's habitual Harriet doing X or Y or Z. And you know what? When you notice it, probably whatever that habit is kind of fades into the background. Okay, enough of my talk, and I would be glad to entertain any questions that you have. And I'm really, I'm a person who really likes to be where we can see each other's expression and body language and share verbally. So I know this is less than ideal. I've really enjoyed being with you, and let's see who might have a question.
It looks like we do have a question, Harriet. Somebody's wondering how mindfulness and imagery compare related to decreasing stress.
Um, I should answer verbally.
Sure.
Yeah. I see what I can type an answer, but I don't need to do that. And for Mary, hopefully you can talk to someone, and possibly me, because I'll be glad to make my my email available if you miss this. But imagery can be very, very helpful to ground us. Sometimes people use the image of a mountain to try to stay still and quiet and to not get caught up in a lot of distress. Sometimes people use an image of a lake that can get waves on the top, but underneath, inside, things are quiet. Those are perfectly fine to use. What happens, though, sometimes if you're trying to use imagery data throughout the day is that it takes you away from the present moment rather than keeping you in the moment. And sometimes we need to be in the moment. The use of sound, would that be appropriate for mindfulness? Tiffany, I think sound would be fine. What you want is something that doesn't invite your mind to run off. Oh, that tune sounds like a tune I used to play on the clarinet. So you might like nature sounds playing in the background. If you go on Insight Timer or one of the mindfulness apps, you might hear intermittent occasional bells. And what I do with that is just say, okay, there's the bell. Am I in the present moment, or was I off, wandered away? So sound can be very, very helpful to really exercise this muscle and get it stronger, so that then when you're out in the middle of your day, you can stop and go, look at me, I'm getting really tense, or whatever one needs to do. Okay. When I first started, Michael, what did I do? What were some of the things you did to help you get the hang of it? Well, when I first started, I used John Kabat-Zinn's book called Full Catastrophe Living. It's an old book now, and it sort of described the program he did in a hospital, where he asked every subspecialty and specialty to send him their patients that they couldn't help at all, that they weren't getting any better, and he did an 8-week mindfulness training with them. And so I tried to just read about that and just do it from the reading. And that was very difficult. I found for me that when I was able to go to a retreat and be with other people trying to do this really hard, really simple thing of staying in the present moment, um, that really helped me. And so I do think that maybe considering a group that you could go to once a week where you can be with other people, that could be very helpful. And I do participate in a couple of groups here in town these happen to be Zen Buddhist groups, but they certainly are not imposing a religious intent on you if you'd like to come and sit. So I've left my email on the resources page, and if any of you want to know about that, I'll be glad to share those with you. But getting the hang of it for me was easier when I was in silence with other people, and I would realize my mind had wandered, and then I could go, oh, these people are trying so hard to do this just like I am. And that really gave me resolve. Kara, improving critical self-talk. Kara, we don't improve it exactly. What happens is the more often we catch it and we just go, oh, there I go again. Not, no, don't do that. But just that piece of, oh, there I go again. Interestingly enough, it starts to drop out a little bit. We're not getting all upset about it. We're just saying, oh, I do that a whole lot. But that's really not very, probably really not good for my state of health and mind. And gee, okay, there I went. We could drop it out. So it sort of self-corrects the more we're able to notice it. And the noticing, it's mostly doing that formal practice and noticing that when your mind wandered, it had something to do with telling yourself, how pitiful you are or how dumb you are or how inept you are, which we all do. And do I think mindfulness, I'm going to the next question, do I think mindfulness can be inspirational? Let me answer that in a couple of ways. If you're thinking about in a religious or spiritual way, the groups that I have run, and I've done chronic illness groups over the years, and I've worked with medical faculty and students and nursing students. What I've found is that people who are part of an organized church or see themselves as religious say that this helps them tremendously in quieting themselves. Often they will use mindfulness before they pray in whatever form their prayer is. Can it be inspirational in terms of you meeting a goal in that way? Yes, it can. And one of the things I will do if I'm going to have a particularly busy or hard day, at the end of my sit, I sort of give myself what I call a self-hypnotic suggestion. And don't freak on the hypnosis thing. It's just that when you get quiet, you are much more able to take in how you want things to be. And so at the very end of a sitting for myself, I will say, okay, I'm just going to go in today being more centered, being more compassionate and kind to others and myself. And I believe that helps. So if that's not the kind of, if those don't answer, please write to me. And apps, Cynthia, I am just not an app person. I came to this long before there were apps. And so there are hundreds of wonderful apps out there. And so I really like Insight Timer, and I use the bells on Insight Timer. And if you actually subscribe, and it doesn't cost a lot each month, but I don't remember how much. They offer you very specific guided meditations on being self-critical, on being resentful, on dealing with physical pain, on dealing with sadness. So I wish I did a better job of this. And actually, what I wish is that I had asked all of you who have tried some of this in the past to just write what your favorite app is, because there are a bunch out there. Carolyn.
It looks like we have one question that's in the chat. It says,
Yes.
um, if you make time to do this every day, does it potentially bring back lost joy?
Uh, Jenny, I think it brings a different kind of joy. Yes, a number of us have lost joy over the past period of time, maybe from a very specific loss, or maybe just because of the state of our world. But yes, as we get quiet and we stop being so critical of ourselves and others, it just sort of creates a little vacuum into which joy can come. The other thing that happens is that, let's say you do your sitting outside, and I love to do my sitting outside. Then my present moment might be a bird call, or it might be the breeze going past on my skin. And all of a sudden, I'm very thankful and joyful about that. So yes, there is a way to get to joy. And yes, do it every day, even if you have to start with what you think might be an embarrassingly short period of time. Vow that you'll do it that much every day. And then hopefully you can expand it. Another question is, would it help with remembering things? And there are lots of reasons we forget. And of course, at my age, I go, well, am I moving into some sort of a loss of cognitive sharpness? And sometimes that is happening to us. But probably the most common reason we aren't remembering things is that we're too anxious. So we're not able to pause, really encode whatever the data were. And then, of course, if we didn't get them into our brain, we can't get them out when we go to try to get them out. So I find, and I tend to be a person who moves, as you can tell, at a very high RPM. And so if I can slow that a little bit, I can remember much better, be more organized, remember much better. It's really funny how this particular strategy can be helpful in so many of our worries. Thank you all. I know I'm running over. Um,
Thank you, Harriet.
Thank you. And please see
So
my email. If I can be helpful, send me an email and remind me at the front that you were in this group. So I will pay attention. I'll be glad to be there.
I
Thank
have
you all.
I've recorded this session, so it will be available for anyone to view again at a later time on our website in the archives. Thank
Thank
you.
you all. Bye. Okay. Oh, good. Very nice. Good.